So I think what we'll do is maybe go ahead and bring our next panel up here. So this might be a good kind of transition into talking about sustainable town planning. So we've put together a roundtable, and this is led by a moderator, CJ Davila. Are you ready? You ready to bring your panel up? So as the panel comes forward, we've brought together some subject matter experts that really understand this industry from a practical, like not just textbook, I've read about these, but actually have done them. So you're going to hear from an expert panel. I'm going to let CJ handle the introductions, but CJ Davila is the Executive Director of the Florida Green Building Coalition. So I'm going to bring him up and welcome the panel, please.
Thank you. Great, thank you. Good afternoon. I am CJ Davila. I'm the Executive Director of the Florida Green Building Coalition. And here today we have some representatives from some of the FGBC certified green communities, some of our most successful communities as well. First we have Laura Cole, Senior Vice President from Lakewood Ranch. We have Pattie Glenn, who's President of GreenSmart. And we have Jennifer Languell, who's President of Trifecta Construction Solutions. The Florida Green Building Coalition is a nonprofit. We certify green buildings. Much as you have certification programs that are nationwide, we are Florida specific. So we deal with the hot, humid climate, disaster mitigation, hurricanes, all the things that make Florida unique. So we feel our certification program is best suited for the state of Florida. We were formed in 2000, and we have a breadth of expertise with people from construction and development, research, product development, and government and public affairs. We are the largest certifying entity in the state of Florida, having certified over 24,000 projects recently, and we're almost at 25. Our certifications include homes, individual and multifamily, high-rise, commercial, local governments, and land developments, which is the what the standard we use to define our neighborhoods and communities. FGB standards are certified by the Florida Legislature, Florida League of Cities, Florida League of Mayors, Florida Home Builders Association, and it's the primary certifying entity for the disaster recovery funds for Michael. So if you're going to use those funds through the Department of Economic Opportunity, they must be certified Florida Green Building Coalition, Florida Green. FGBC land development certification provides preservation of green space, less traffic congestion, natural resource conservation, third-party certification and verification, less water, air pollution, and a value of community amenities. All of these things are primary reasons that these communities are successful. They create spaces that people want to live in and communities that people want to be a part of. FGBC land development, current certifications, Alice Beach, which is just your neighbor right here. We've got Babcock Ranch, Granada Park, Lakewood Ranch, Oakland Park in Orange County, Orlando, and River Creek Preserve in Alachua County. We are a nonprofit, and this is our website, floridagreenbuilding.org. And if you visit that website, you can actually pull up our land development standards. And because we are a nonprofit, we do not charge for those resources. So if you wanted to see the components of a certified green land development, you can actually pull up our checklist and see what goes into making those communities so popular and so sustainable. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our panelists. Not sure how that's going to happen. Okay. All righty, perfect.
Your name first. Languell, Jennifer. And it's the PDF because mine did a weird font thing. Can you guys hear me okay? I hate to feel like I'm shouting into these things. So as he's pulling this up, let me just give you some perspective as to who I am and why I'm here. I've been working with Babcock Ranch since about 2006 on this project, so I keep saying out loud, it's been 10 years, but I guess it's really been 15 years now at this point. The land was purchased, I can actually flip, I think here. So the land was actually purchased in 2005, and it was the largest land purchase in the history of Florida. You can see the location, it spans both Lee and Charlotte County. It was about 92,000 acres that were purchased. 74,000 of those acres were then sold back to the state and put into permanent conservation. So the area that's being developed on that left-hand part is what's in red. And that's about 19,000 and change acres. And we're looking at having about 20,000 total residential units on that property. So area 6, which you can see on the middle graph, was the most disturbed of the areas. This is basically old farming land. There was an active ranch. Phosphate mines, so you'll see some of the lakes that exist were old phosphate mines. And so they really looked at what was there for the most part, and that really drove how this development happened. So when the land was purchased, as you can imagine, this was a huge chunk of greenfield site that people didn't want developed. So you kind of have the cave people, which are the citizens against virtually everything that start fighting the project. You have Sierra Club, so you have all of these folks that were really anti-growth or development, so to speak. And so we really worked on the sustainability mission of the project because we know that you can develop and you can develop better, so to speak. These colors are a little off. So as you probably noticed, the property was inland. Let me go back here. So it's not coastal. It takes about 35 minutes to get. This is Fort Myers Beach here, this is Sanibel, so it takes about 35 minutes to get there. The project is in 150-mile-per-hour wind load zone. So that was something that we were really focusing on, was the fact that in an area where you're 30 feet above elevation and you have a lower wind load zone, we're going to build a durable community. So that was one of our pillars, so to speak, was durability that we decided to focus on. The Kitson, Sid Kitson, Kitson and Partners is the developer, wanted certain things day one when the community opened. He wanted a school open, he wanted restaurants, he wanted a wellness center, he wanted a coffee shop, he wanted an ice cream shop, he wanted a functioning town. Small in scale, but he wanted all of this stuff open the day the first person put a shovel in the ground to start going vertical. And so that was just his absolute mission. So what the little stats say here that you can't really read, I think the biggest differentiator in this project is we have 150 megawatt solar photovoltaic array. So we have, it's 680,000 panels. We can power all of the houses at build out, so 19,000 plus units at build out, plus an additional 42 million square feet of space off of this solar panel. We also have battery backup. We have about 40 megawatt hours of battery backup, which means I can power 1,000 houses for 2 days off of those batteries. So as we grow, obviously, we're planning to add additional battery storage, but that is a big kind of mission, so to speak. In the first year, we had 156 students. So we were at capacity the first year in the school. We then doubled capacity the next year. So the school on the bottom is the second school building. We tilted up the first panel in March and we were open for July. So absolute fast track construction to get that open because of the demand for the school. The developer will tell you to this day, the school is driving sales. So they were very, very out of their element because Southwest Florida, much more retirement type community. They weren't ready for a family-oriented community. They just mentally weren't there. They were used to retirees. And so the demographic is very, very different from what they expected. Before we started, obviously letting people build, so one of the unique things that we did was obviously we have design guidelines. And those design guidelines dictate how much turf you can have. They dictate that you have to have wireless access ports. They talk about every little piece and component that the builders are going to have to do. But we did some very, very simple things like every house has to have a NEMA 1450 plug-in in the garage. What this does is it gives you 220 power, so I can charge my car in less hours than 110. Because if I try and charge my car at 110, it'll take me a week. 13 days, actually, I think is what it would take. But this, every night, I can absolutely charge my car overnight in the garage. So just in that little town center, Founder Square, we have 9 charging stations. I can tell you I have to drive 4 miles from here to get to the only charging station in this area. Panama City is the closest supercharger. So, you know, that's just where we are and how we are trying to build in some future technologies. There's gig fiber, which, you know, back in the day seemed like an advanced thing. It seems more common at this point now. The phase 1 overview. So phase 1A is this section right here. This whole section that you see is phase 1, which is this square out of that whole town. So this whole section is Babcock Ranch. So there are 5 semi-production builders, and so far we have 3 national builders in there. And so there's a lot of lessons learned with respect to bringing builders on board. Everyone laughed at Sid when he was going to do this. They said it's never going to work. No one's buying into the sustainability stuff. Again, first movement of dirt was in 2015. So as you can imagine, from 2005 to 2015, we did the charrette process and made some conceptual designs, and then the crash hit. So then when things started coming back, we did another charrette process and redesigned, and then had another charrette process and redesigned. So in that 10 years of kind of the design phase, we reworked this land plan many, many times. So the good news is we're selling 2 houses a day. So when the community debuted, they debuted at like 34, I think, on this list. Lakewood Ranch, I think, is up at, 3. So we're a baby too. Sorry, I knew you were up high. We're a baby compared to them. Like I said, we have at this point 1,189 houses sold out of the 20,000. We've sold 71 so far this year. So what are my lessons learned? Education. The first thing we had to do is we had these great land planners come in and give us this master concept plan that was awesome. But that then got turned over to a different team to build out and initiate. So the pretty pictures at some point in time had to turn into engineering drawings. And so we had to educate our internal design team, who wasn't necessarily there in the conceptual design phase, as to what they were required to do. That they had to look at different cross sections for the streets, that they had to build in pocket parks, that they had to build in street trees and walkways and trails. And so in addition to the internal components, we had to then educate our external consultants as to what we really wanted. Because when an engineer, and I'm an engineer, but when we get a beautiful picture, like, we're gonna design it and it's gonna be squares and rectangles because that's the easiest way to do it. So engineers don't always make it look pretty, so you definitely have to be going back and forth. The senior execs. So your senior executives don't always know what you're doing. From a standpoint of how you're designing a given parcel of land. And I say this because that phase 1A triangle, the developer designed pocket parks, community gardens, linear parks, you name it. Then at some point in time, to make the financial worksheet happen and to appease the investors and get lots sold, we sold a whole track off to Pulte and a whole track off to Lennar. Well, in an effort to close those sales, the president at the time let loose or relaxed some of those requirements. So they don't have front porches, they don't have pocket parks, they don't have the things that we were completely committed to, and that's because the senior executives didn't necessarily know that those were required. Contracts and legal, so that really goes back to when you're selling, when you have Pulte taking down a tract of land, or Lennar taking down a tract of land, or Meritage. If your contract and legal team doesn't know that those are part of the requirements, they're gonna get taken out by Lennar's legal team. So you have to have your team all in the know. The town ambassadors are the meet and greet of the community. They turn over quickly, so you have to keep re-educating them as to what makes the town interesting, different, sustainable. The same thing with the builders and their salespeople. Turnover fast, so it's this constant education process. Contract employees and residents, so yes, you can build it and we as humans can screw it up in a heartbeat. So this education process with respect to native vegetation, minimizing turf, all of the things that we did inherently in the design guides had to then be relayed to the residents so they knew what to do. So it is a certified, as CJ mentioned, Florida Green Building Coalition community, and there's different categories and kind of chunks of what they did. The design guidelines, like I said, these are 50-page documents that literally walk you through every little piece of what's going on. The evolution, so here in the phase 1A, you can see here's a linear park, this is a community garden, here's another park, this happens to be a linear park, a lake house. So all sorts of green space built in pockets. This is the first design. By the time it transitioned to the next design, obviously we had to build in stormwater retention. So there's some lakes now that have been added. But when you start looking at these chunks, which were after phase 1A, you lose any of the pocket parks. This is just lots, basically. This over here has a couple little pocket parks here and there, but not as consistent with the design as we wanted it to be in the first phase. So this shows you just proximity of, this happens to be the two schools. So this is your quarter-mile radius for schools. This is your quarter-mile radius for retail. That's schools and parks. If I were to do that in the Lennar chunk that they took down, it would look very different. So what did we have to do? We had to go back and right the ship, basically. So this is the Lennar track, and this is basically a lot assessment. How many buildable lots can I get on this chunk of land? Because that's going to determine how much they're going to pay for it. And again, that's what it looks like. Sure, there's stormwater retention ponds or lakes, but no pocket parks. We do have a trailhead. This is a lift station here, so it may appear to be a park, but it's a lift station. Yes, there's some green space around it, but there was opportunity for certain preserves, but they were missed opportunities because people weren't staying on top of it. So what we did, and I know you can't read this, but I know we'll have these electronically, was we came back to those production builders and we said, you know what, thank you for being a risk with us and proof of concept. You came out here, you had no idea if people were actually going to buy in BFE, Charlotte County. And guess what they did? And now you want more land from us. So for us to sell you more land, here's what you're going to have to do. For every 100 lots, you have to have a pocket park. For every 200 lots, you have to have a trailhead. For every 300 lots, you have to have an active park, meaning playground, gazebo, or something else. So we gave them a menu of things they could pick from. So we weren't dictating one thing they had to do. We said, here's a variety of things that are consistent with what we want. Pick whichever you want, but it's based off of number of lots. And so that's how we were able to right the ship, so to speak, with those production builders. And I think that's all I have because I know we're time limited. So are we doing Lakewood Ranch next? Lakewood Ranch, okay. Just so he knows what to talk.
Thank you, Jennifer, and I feel your pain on a lot. we'll talk a little bit about that. And I think it is kind of interesting. I think both Jennifer and I are speaking from a perspective of very large scale master plan communities, and certainly there are terrific opportunities that come with that, but also challenges just because of the scale and the capital demands that exist and requirements for for absorption within a 100-year period, which I think is, in our perfect world, we'd have design guidelines and we'd have custom builders doing all of the really, I think, amazing things that Seaside has done. But we do have to make compromises because of our scale and because of our investors and what their expectations are. So my name is Laura Cole, and I head up the residential program for Lakewood Ranch, which amounts to close to 40,000 units, both runs the gamut of residential from for sale to rental. And we're actively managing about 21 builders and what will be close to 20,000 lots that still need to be sold. So I will, here we go, kind of walk you through where we are in Lakewood Ranch today and how we've evolved to kind of be a hybrid of really what Jennifer was talking about with a village called Waterside. So let me get us a little oriented. For those of you who don't know where Lakewood Ranch is, we are on the west coast of Florida. We're that heart, about 45 minutes south of St. Petersburg and about 25 minutes away from the beaches of Sarasota. You see us there east of 75 is Lakewood Ranch, and we're bifurcated by 2 counties. So we're about 2/3 of us, northern part of Lakewood Ranch lies within Manatee County. The south is in Sarasota County. And historically, we've done most of our development north in Manatee County. We are also east of 75, which when the owners of Lakewood Ranch, Schrader Manatee Ranch, who's owned it for about 100 years, decided to go into community building, they were, I guess, told by up to 10 different consultants that you're crazy, don't ever go east of 75, this will never work. And that is, in fact, that's what you want to hear if you want to be a successful master plan community developer. I think Reston heard that, the Woodlands, Columbia, all the great master plan communities heard that they were absolutely insane. So there was plenty of that talk in the beginning. This is our, well, that's an interesting, didn't look like that when I sent it, but to the left there is our master plan, is our map there. And you see it's about, it's over 33,000 acres, and it's been held in the same family for over 100 years. It's Schrader Manatee Ranch, who's the developer for Lakewood Ranch. Initially, they used the land for purposes of harvesting wood. They used to be with the Schlitz brewery in Milwaukee. Moved to they used to be the second largest contributor to Tropicana's orange demand. And then it's kind of the land that keeps giving. Throughout its history, it also had shell mining, and so we did mining, and so all of the large lakes within Lakewood Ranch were part of our shell mining operation, which we closed down last year. And of course, those ended up resulting in pretty nice lot premiums for our builders once we decided to go into community building. One of the reasons I think we have done well most recently in terms of our sales performance nationally is that we're at that real sweet spot for a master plan community where we've reached critical mass. We're 27 years into community building in Lakewood Ranch. And we have most of the services, I'll go through some of the things we have, but we have most of the elements in place that really start then creating momentum. So we're in a very fortunate place. We've also, we're in a very fortunate part of the market cycle where we were able to really focus on segmentation. And when the market got hot, we had a lot of products really across every price point and life stage. One thing to mention, and we talked, CJ talked about our participation with the Green Building Council. But one of the wonderful things of having, and this is something that may not be transferable, so I'm always hesitant to say it, but unlike having to be financed by private equity or other type of capital sources where you have such high demand on quarterly returns and things like that, in quite frankly, a product type that doesn't match capital. You know, a project that's going to take 50 years to build out, in my opinion, has never made any sense to finance it through private equity. But we've had the benefit of having really stable, solid ownership that's allowed us to carry out the vision for Lakewood Ranch and make investments in the future. Schools, Jennifer talked about, that's one of the main reasons why we've been doing very well throughout our history. But that ownership structure has really allowed us to make investments in things that at the moment probably made no sense, but in the long run, our parks, our trails, some of the schools and things that we've done in terms of giving away land have paid huge dividends. So we're kind of in that midway point of development. This is Lakewood Ranch at a glance, and I won't go through all of this, but again, this kind of speaks to where we are today in terms of services and residential and commercial. We have 29 residential villages, and they range anywhere from 350 units to 1,500, to 1,700 units, actually. So it's a very large community with a lot of activity going on right now. Our population is about 48,000, and our average age is well below the average for our region. And we've been attracting younger families, especially during COVID. It's really been remarkable to see how many people, because of remote working, have made the decision to relocate. We also have an average higher income in the area, and our education and business centers are one of the reasons that we continue to attract people. So from our perspective, just kind of talking about the build out of Lakewood Ranch, where we are today and how we sort of developed, this central part of Lakewood Ranch is where we started. And when I say we, is the developer, Schrader Manatee Ranch. We were the master developer, we were the master planner, we designed the neighborhoods, we developed the amenities, we did lot by lot sales to individual builders in the beginning. And when you go through Lakewood Ranch, you kind of recognize that. You see the segmentation was really well done. It was a multi-builder program. There's much more diversity within the neighborhoods and attention to detail. This part of Lakewood Ranch now is about 91% built out. And that was a terrific model, again, that had basically 100 to 150 year absorption cycle associated with it. It is just a very different model because of our scale. It really wasn't a viable thing to continue into perpetuity, probably. We all know the recession hit, and all of our independent builders were, as terrific as they were incapable of getting any type of financing out of the downturn. So we had to kind of shift our mindset. And by then we really kind of had established Lakewood Ranch. So the national builders started coming out and saying, we'd like to participate in your community. And so we turned our business model around completely. And we really became, we basically sell pods at that time to these national builders. So Lennar came in with the first Bridgewater, I think it was 500 units. Now they're up to 1,500 and 1,700 unit takedowns. So they're sort of master plan communities within master plan communities, if you will. So we gave that a go, and that becomes quite intoxicating, by the way, when somebody says they come to your master plan community and says they want to take 1,500 lots from you. And you're in a market cycle and you're thinking, well, you know, okay, I think what we'll do is we'll start focusing on other things in Lakewood Ranch to make sure that we really kind of hold this together in different ways, and we'll talk about that. The Northwest did so well, and I think that's the other thing to remember, is you have to remember what the market wants, and sometimes we, as we're designing our communities, spend a lot of times coming up with residential guidelines and things that we value very heavily, but that add a tremendous amount of cost to the builders. I worked on a community in Northern Virginia, Nagrahood, where we did work with the Pulteys and the Lennars, and the Pulteys and Kay Hovnanian and others. And it became a little bit of a battle, and we kind of met in the middle where they proved us out, and I think we both ended up with a better community. In the Northeast, we thought this wouldn't open until the next market cycle, but sales have been really brisk. And so most of I think I have a little dude over here. No? Anyways, most of the programs that were in the Northwest quadrant sold at such a pace that the builders came back to us and say, hey, we want to do a continuing program in the Northeast. So the Northeast now we built all the roads, we have everything under a stewardship district, which allows us to do bond financing on all the infrastructure, and that's, we have 30-year bonds on those, which ultimately get passed to the builders and then the residents. And here today, where we are, is in our Sarasota project, and the one I wanted to sort of highlight the most today. Here, we're about 22% to build out in Waterside, and this is a very different animal. This is, again, a restructuring of our company because this is a hybrid model from what we've gone from being the ones that, getting down to very granular lot-by-lot development to selling pods up in the north. Now we're doing hybrid development here in Waterside through Sarasota. And this is a pretty special project. This gives you a sense of kind of where we are today. We have 22,000 units. We're adding another 17,000 units, and we'll end up, quite frankly, we're going to end up closer to 50,000 because we're doing some joint ventures and we're expanding the boundaries of the ranch. So the ranch continues to grow. This is our sales pace since 2015, when we came out of, really started picking up after the downturn. So Jennifer, being in marketing, I say that we're actually number one. We're the number one multi-generational community because the villages are ahead of us and we'll never catch them. And so John Burns gave us this different moniker and we just run with it. But it is a really important point because in Florida, if you're branded as an active adult or as a retirement community, that's what you're really going to be for the rest of your life, unless you really are able to diversify your demographics. And so for us, I think one of the best gifts that the initial leadership ever gave me was that they focused on being Lakewood Ranch being a multi-generational community, and they focused on affordability in the beginning. We got really high on our price points, and now we're working again on bringing back affordability. So how are we evolving? Well, this is our residential mix. We're blessed that we have the land, that we have the builder diversity, and so we right now, if you come to Lakewood Ranch, if you're looking for entry level, you can find townhomes in the 240. They used to be 230, but because of everything we've talked about, they're about 245. You can find a full 100% solar community by Lennar. You can find a condo in our Main Street project. You can find townhomes, and then you can go all the way up to custom homes in the high millions. Where things are kind of moving in terms of the residential, and I say I blame, but when I say this lovingly, Taylor Morrison, because again, the model when we were designing everything, we built the parks, we connected everything with trails, we had to really put in hard assets that were very expensive. All of our communities, because of the scale, they've become kind of their own master plan communities. And so there's this, I call it the arms race for resort level amenities in Lakewood Ranch. And so Taylor Morrison kind of hit, they came in with a tiki bar and we're doing a culinary center and, and next thing you know, Pulte's coming in with like a whole indoor basketball pavilion and this, that, and so, they're ramping up their amenity offerings within their communities. And in the past, we had to do all of that hard infrastructure. We have a tennis center, we have a international sports campus where Nike uses it for international play. We had to do, our golf club, which has 3 different golf courses. That is really expensive, and that's something I have to manage every day. And I'm like, and it just amazes me how expensive it is to run these facilities. So we've kind of been able to step back now and say, hey, if these guys are building all those amenities within their community, what do we become to make sure that they're still glue in the community, that they're still what I call the connective tissue that makes it Lakewood Ranch. And I have to say, almost more than any community I've ever been to, if you ask anybody, it doesn't matter if you're in the 250,000 townhome village or you're in Lake Club and you've paid $5 million for your home, and somebody asks you where you're from, they're going to tell you Lakewood Ranch. They're never going to say their village as a first foray. And I think that's a huge brand awareness and opportunity for us to continue to work on. So in terms of SMR and what we're doing in terms of our community-based amenities, we're really focused on really lifestyle and on what I call the software of the community. So it's not just now, we do our parks, we do our beloved trails, but we have a Parks and Rec, we just opened a Parks and Recreation department. We're 27 years into this and we're a city. So we need Parks and Recreation. We need to activate those spaces. We have a farmer's market that draws about 4,000 people every Sunday. Huge opportunity, but that goes also with education. We have a whole educational program around food. And so as developers, as we're moving along, I think it's more exciting because I think we can basically reprogram and really recast some of these spaces instead of focusing so much on the hard assets. So where are we going in terms of commercial and retail? To the far left, top left, that's Main Street. That was built, gosh, I guess almost 20 years ago, and it's really been the heart and soul of the community. And we made a lot of mistakes. I mean, if you go to Main Street, the first question you're gonna have is, why did you guys put a putt-putt golf where the waterfront is? It doesn't make a lot of sense. The sidewalks are very narrow. It's, you know, at times when we have events and things like that, it really is beyond capacity. So we've learned our lessons from that, but it's still, you know, we certainly aren't turning our back to it. In the top right there, you see actually Tavistock, who developed Lake Nona, is a partner with us on big mixed-use projects. They came in and they helped us with a lifestyle center, and so that's a new town center for the north. To the bottom left there, that's the beginnings of CORE, which is our life science project. We have entered into a relationship with Harvard and Mass General. They're running a longitudinal study in Lakewood Ranch for brain health, which is equivalent to the heart study that was done in Framingham, gosh, now 5 decades ago. And to the bottom right is Waterside. And that's where we've kind of culminated all of our learnings from Lakewood Ranch and have been able to, I think, evolve the master plan community model from, you know, what it started as to going to big pods to now really kind of having a hybrid solution. So Waterside's there in the south. It has some of the most beautiful lakes in Lakewood Ranch. And again, those were our mines. And it's a real focus on, I think, for most of us who've been studied or been involved with master plan communities, one of the things that we always confront is, you know, being really frank about it, is that it's the sameness. So master plan communities, when you go, whether you like it or not, they just have, you know, a lack of authenticity or lack of sort of interest in certain things. We've been really focused on bringing the culture. Sarasota is a center for culture in Florida, and we're, for whatever reason, they're not holding on to their cultural assets. So we raised our hand, and so we've gotten one of their theaters, and they're moving Moat just across the highway. So there's lots of opportunities. For us, Waterside is really, you see these 7 lakes. Most of the residential, it's more now than 60% of the 5,000 plus acres is going to be held in open space and conservation. There are no gates. That's wow, actually, from Lakewood Ranch perspective. No gates, integrated neighborhoods, mixed income neighborhoods. We have a 40%, and I came from the DC area where affordable housing and MPDU program in Maryland and everything, I think the highest I'd ever seen by transit was maybe 30%, mostly 15% to get your densities. Here, somehow we ended up with 40% affordability requirement between 80% and 120% of area median income. And we were like, that's great, because you know what? We're ceding that part of the market to other people. And if it's gonna work, it's gonna work here in Waterside. The town center there, you see Waterside Place. I'll show you some images. We're gonna open that this summer. And we have a tremendous job center here in Corporate Park. So the mix of uses is really unique in this space. The proximity to Sarasota. We've made connections to Sarasota, downtown Sarasota, with 2 major arterials. Parks and trails, still the heart and soul of Lakewood Ranch, and we'll still focus on that. And then our civic uses. This is a VR model that we have, and that's a whole nother topic, how valuable these are these days. But this is gonna be open in June, and we're really excited. Everybody keeps saying, oh, it looks like Rosemary Beach, and I'm like, I'm sure there's a lot of Rosemary Beaches now out there. It's a very different model than we've done before. You see, we have an 8-acre park there to the west that'll be activated, and we love when somebody says, oh my gosh, but what if the volleyball players are out there until like 11 o'clock, and we're like, God willing, God willing, young people are out here till 11, 12, and 1 a.m. That's what we want. We really want a dynamic center. We have freestanding restaurants, retail, office above, commercial. The yellow tops are all rentals. So we have 875 units of apartments and rental townhomes there in the town center area. And we think that's going to add vibrancy and hopefully add some continuing, visitation. And I'm running long. I didn't realize I'd put so many slides, but so up to the left, this is the Player Center. That's part of the town center. And again, that's a whole different ballgame than we've done in the past. We're bringing a theater. It's modern architecture. It's going to add interest. We have the farmers market is moving to the town center. And this is kind of where we are today. You see the top left. We're just finishing some of the hardscaping and moving into the landscaping. The far right, we have apartments that are leasing at ridiculous rates because of everything we know is going on right now in the market. People can't find homes, so like we'll just rent. And then we have established neighborhoods like the ones below that were already in place. And finally, this is kind of my area, and what I'm the proudest of is we really wanted this to be a walkable. Everything is connected by trails. There's a water taxi that goes to the town center from all the neighborhoods on the Big Lake. And we really set the market. Here you see the existing neighborhoods were 500,000 to 1.5. We brought in assisted living because we think that's really important. We brought in apartments, so at the end of the day, we'll be about 1,200 apartments. We have 2 future single-family rental projects going in, and those are, if you guys are reading anything, those are the hottest things. We have 2 that are already active in Lakewood Ranch. These will be 2 new ones. And then you have projects, and you look at you look at where these are located. These, what I call the mixed income neighborhoods, from 250,000 to 420,000 along the south banks of some of these really scenic lakes, looking into the town center, walkable to the town center. Our average price point in Lakewood Ranch now is, on a contract basis, about 575,000. All day we could have sold homes for 575,000 down there. But we are happy to meet our obligation for affordable housing, and we think it's going to make a huge difference. And finally, these are just some of the other areas that we're working on. But for us, the sustainability piece is the fact that you're going to have a new school that people can walk to. You're going to walk to the town center. Everything's connected by a trail network. We're working with Panasonic to look at a mobility plan for specifically Waterside for the future, and have been integrated in some of their ideas as of right now. And I don't know, it's just a really exciting time because, it's a great opportunity, ridiculous market. And we really are happy that people who work in Lakewood Ranch can actually live in Lakewood Ranch, because we see them leave every day. And so we're happy to meet that part of the market. Thank you.
Yes.
So what Babcock Ranch has is some history with the old telegraph and some railroad and some cattle. We didn't necessarily uncover any kind of Native American or anything like that. But definitely when you go out to the ranch, you can see the old telegraph line from back in the day. And again, rail was really the most historic part.
Oh, for me. I wasn't, our property has been under some form of agriculture, cattle, whatever, for now over 100 years. And so I haven't really been involved with that aspect. And I'm kind of unaware, honestly, of any historic. I don't think they would tell me that.
Hi, I'm Pattie Glenn. I'm the founder and president of Mart Incorporated and a couple of other countries that are all ancillary to this vision. And I was on the founding board of FGBC and served for 11 consecutive years. I've done my time. But we helped write the standards for green for the state of Florida. But to me, why it was such an important effort, this organization it was imperative to us to have a public-private partnership and how both sectors contribute to this vision. It's not gonna execute into the marketplace unless you have the builders and developers having voice in the way this is gonna go. So I'm here today to present the town of Alice Beach, a sustainable case study. I'm gonna give you just a brief little overview of how it began. The town of Alice Beach began as a love story. I love that because people can relate to emotions and benefits and warm and fuzzies. That opens the little black box that tells them it's okay to make an investment here. So it's very important to me to tell the story. So with keen observation of, you know what, this went twice. I'm sorry, let me go back. Yes, one more, I think. No? Okay. Here we go. I'm sorry, I didn't see that jump ahead. So Birmingham founder and CEO of EBSCO Industries, Elton Bryson Stevens, was the first developer to join FGBC. Is that me?
They might be automated. Yeah.
I thought I had turned that off. I apologize. Okay, gosh, but it's going crazy, isn't it? Can you disable it? Okay, thanks. So Elton B. Stevens fell in love with this part of Florida as a child, and early in his marriage, he raised his children near Seagrove. They came for the long, hot summers, and that's when there were no roads. There was no Rosemary or Seaside or Alice Beach. This was pristine, natural Florida, untouched in all its majesty. That was the motivation for him to come back and buy the 158-acre parcel in 1978 at a public auction. He drove down with his son, Jim Stevens, and his wife, Julie, and they left that day owning the 158-acre parcel of Alice Beach. Now, I didn't know Mr. Stevens, but I read enough about him to know that he was a very successful businessman. He believed in doing things right the first time. And they dreamt and discussed and planned for 23 years before they actually pulled the trigger to begin development. And in 2001, I don't know if you know CJ, but they were the first developer to join as a member. And that's pretty exciting, trying to get that. Thank you. So 2001, the Florida Green Building Coalition was born, and Alice Beach was a part of that movement. When I go back and look at what they've done, to me it looks like their development timeline looks like a roadmap of best management practices of FGBC. That's a beautiful thing to see because we don't always see that in the marketplace and in the private sector. In 2003, I'm sorry, it's got a mind of its own. They brought in Andre Duanas and Galina, and I'm sorry if I'm gonna mess up her name, but Galina. And they were the town planners for Alice Beach. He had such a wonderful vision, and what made Alice Beach a little bit more unique is that they had the private oceanfront land, but it also stretched north all the way to the pine forest and the wetlands. So they had a very diverse site of natural resources. And their task was to design a town that would protect long, beautiful views of the ocean while being compact and scaled back towards the green space. And ultimately, it connected to the Walton County Trail System. The first thing they did, which actually, if you're going to be a certified green development in Florida for FGBC, is that they ordered all of their studies, the environmental, the historical, the wildlife study, and they studied that along with the topography and the wetlands on that land. That's what has to come first. I've come in after the fact, and I'm pretty good at getting things certified, but it's a lot easier and it costs a lot less if you do it from plan review stage. In 2004, Alice Beach was born. DPZ had the wisdom and the insight to hire town architects. Eric Vogt and Marianne Corey Vogt, they designed the town. They created the designs. And they have done a beautiful job. And let me tell you, it's tightly regulated. And the things that they did, though, they were very courageous in setting mandates in their CDRs and in their design code. Every home must be certified by Fortified for Safer Living. That makes it durable and more resistant to windstorms. And we all know that this area likes to attract storms. So they were brilliant in that investment right up front by positioning their community to meet Fortified for Safer Living. Even their commercial buildings meet that standard. So they are the first community to make that differentiation for Fortified in the world. That's impressive. The second thing that they did was they mandated that all of the homes must also meet the Florida Green Building Coalition Green Home Standard. So that's made it a lot easier for us, but you still have that constant need for education like Jennifer was talking about. Personnel changes, builders may change or come and go, and you've got to be able to have a third-party inspection and guide them through the guiding principles for the community. Marianne and Eric developed the Alice Beach Design Code. That's an incredible piece of work because most of the rating components are already built into the standards for the community, as well as the CDRs, the green covenants and deed restrictions that accompany that into legal terminology. So this is what a Fortified for Safer Living certificate looks like. This is one we recently passed. And it's that, they actually put that into the design, into the notes on the plans. They list the inspection schedule. It is very detailed, and it must be inspected and submitted by an engineer. And that has been, I think, a critical component of why that community will be there for a very long time. This is what the certificate for Florida Green Building Coalition's Green Home Standard looks like. And then the economic recession had, they were well on their track. They had put in Kaliza Pool, and that was about the time that I came to work there and certify my first home there. And so they were moving right along when the rest of the economy tanked as those, and yet, it was amazing to me. Every time I come on that site, it makes me feel good. I feel good in my shoes because I really understand what they're doing. Every design element has sound guidelines and principles tied to it, but they make it look simple, elegant, and luxurious. That's the amazing part of it. Oh. And yet, unforeseen abundance rose from the ashes of the decline for Alice Beach. I was there. I've been a real estate broker for 30 plus years. I've been doing green building certification for 21. And I'm here to tell you that that was an amazing feat. They had never planned for to be so successful, but throughout the decline, I was right there and I just could not believe all the activity and the people and the town building. And it was because of their vacation rental program. And so I just watched this and I could not believe, that was when commercial paper had dried up. So as far as like, but they were coming and spending their money to come there until the lending opened up again. In fact, the finance director early on told me that they couldn't believe it because they made more money in those years of the economic decline recovery on vacation rentals than they had ever made. That's amazing. Now, I think that's probably tilted the scale towards sales now because they are so busy. Alice Beach was certified as green development in 2011. And they won FGBC's highest scoring green development for that year. So now I'm just, there's so much to this story. I thought I would just pick out the top award winners that we've had since then so that you could see our evolution in the process. So in 2017, the Alice Beach Town Center broke ground with its corner anchor. The first building was the Project Aleutian. It was a commercial office mixed use with multifamily, our definition of multifamily. They're condominiums, if you will, and but it falls under FGBC's definition of green multifamily. So that was an amazing project, and we won 2017's top scoring green multifamily, the four of the models out of the 8 building in there. The next year, I had spent years working with Alice Beach Construction, but changeover with personnel, that's an ongoing thing. We started really educating everybody, doing training and really working through to it. I had to spend a lot of time assuring some of the project managers that no, I'm not the county building inspector. I'm here to make you a rock star. But that happened. And one of the most resistant PMs, the project managers there, was really hesitant to let me come on the job and inspect it. And I had to sit him down one day and say, look, I'm not your building inspector. I'm the green building inspector that's going to make you look like a rock star in this community. This is lot NN1. It scored 241, which platinum begins at 190. And so this home, beautiful home, scored that high in 2018 for the highest scoring single family home. This project, the Kalisa Court row houses, won best community for the Aurora Awards, the SCBC Awards, and then we went on to submit it for the national awards, and it won best in green community for the nation. Now I'm going to tell you, it's always been my perspective that when you're educating builders and trainers to change their practices and to look at this from a broader scale, you have to have buy-in, right? This community had the difference is that project manager had been building science trained. And Alice Beach had brought in Building Science Corp to teach that to them very early in the project. Just so happened that I was the first realtor in the country to be building science certified as an energy rater a long time prior, and I believe that is the key component of the success of green building. You really need to understand how a building works as a system. I apologize for this picture. This is an oceanfront lot. We had to get the drone out to take the picture, and it was kind of like a foggy morning. Quite beautiful, but not the best for pictures. This is lot MM12, and it was the highest scoring single-family home for 2019 with a score of 252 platinum. Amazing what these guys do. And it was the same project manager. Now it was like, okay, Pattie, when you come, whatever you say. You know, once they win an award, I believe that once they get the recognition for what they're doing, their motivation level just jumps way high. This may be the strong contender for the 2020 single-family home. This is lot L3 by Alice Beach Construction, and its score is 252. Now, of course, those awards haven't been announced yet. That's CJ smiling over there. But I think we've got a pretty good shot. This is the second anchor in the Alice Beach Town Center. It's called the May, and these homes performed very well. Jennifer was the evaluator for the project, and they do such cool things. It takes a lot of time to really go through the plans to kind of see where they are. They have a wonderful stormwater system at Alice Beach with secondary treatment, and then they release it for subsurface conservation, irrigation to the common areas. That's amazing. So this project, the highest score, something about the number 200 in these mixed use buildings, because it scored 256. That is really high. Part of that, of course, is going to be the orientation inside that building, where some of them have less glass, all of those things. The solar heat load is less. That's probably contributed to this very, very high score. But almost all of them were platinum. And four others scored over 230, which is pretty high score. And so the Alice Beach love story continues to unfold with purpose, classic design, and timeless grace. And resilient homes offer intrinsic value to give nod to simple luxury, durability, and resilience to last. Elton and Alice Stevens would be proud. Thank you.
When I heard the Pensacola folks talking about their design could qualify for certification, or they would hope that the builders would ultimately certify, the reality is there's 3 reasons people do green. And stereotypically, you'll hear it costs more, it's gonna take too long, and I think what you've heard from all 3 of us is that it's adding value to the projects, and there is a significant payback. But the 3 reasons they're doing it is either because it's required by the developer, required by the local government. It's a requirement. Number 2 is money's tied to it. So a lot of affordable housing, it's tied to government money. Government says you must certify green, or your funding partner, like Prudential, says you must certify green because we want a valuable asset. Or also incentives, because I believe even Sarasota County still to this day offers a $1,000 incentive for single residential homes that are certified green. So your new builders in Sarasota are kind of thrilled because Manatee County didn't do that. And then the third one is corporate culture. So it's either, that it's a requirement, money's tied to it, or someone's corporate culture is saying, I'm just gonna build green. One other thing that I wrote down was water. So that's a thing that is very valuable. To me, it's even more critical than energy. And so, we have a low flow requirement. We have a lot of native vegetation requirements. And from a water standpoint, we actually, because we're our own utility, saved $8 million on the construction of the water treatment plant because of the analysis and knowing we're going to be processing less water because we were demanding low flow fixtures. Lakewood Ranch requires zoysia, a very drought tolerant grass. and obviously you have native requirements as well, and Alice Beach has cisterns. You know, so a common theme also is this water component that we all know no one's making any new water. And then I think data is the other one. So Pattie had some great data. You know, I constantly look at the HERS scores, which are the home energy ratings, and make sure, you know, we're on track with respect to, you know, where the energy performance should be. So I think those are also some key things with respect to, you have to keep on top of it, collect the data to make sure everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of curious because I think the thing we still combat is consumer behavior and what their perspective on what, or perception on what green building is. And I'm kind of curious what Babcock Ranch's experience has been in terms of selling the, you know, the certainly the more sustainable electrical being off, or the solar panels and things like that. I know in our community, one thing that really struck me was I was very excited that Lennar was going to do 100% solar village. And then they proceeded not to market it that way. And so we kind of kept saying, you know, we got excited and we said, we're going to, you know, it's 500 homes. It's not insignificant. There's a lot to learn here. Can we partner with you? Can we try to understand who your buyer profile is, what they're responding to? Feature, but not really anything that derived a tremendous amount of benefits for people. And I'm kind of curious if that was their own hesitation that, you know, they're not completely sold on it, or it just was a curious thing.
So what we found for years, and this even holds true through the recession in the late 2008, 2008, 2009, was that if you add green on as a feature, and you say, here's my house, plus, oh, you want it green, here's the add-on, here's the $5,000 add, or whatever the case may be, no one buys it. If you just build it inherent to the structure, then it's just perceived as value. So the people buying those houses are buying them because they know it's a good value, because it does have those features, but they would never think to ask for them, or if they're given, oh, here's your sheet on upgrades, you can have a greenhouse or granite. Well, everyone knows what the value of granite is. It's common now, but you know, back in the day, everyone knew granite is a better countertop. It's a better selling point. A SEER 18 air conditioner versus a SEER 14 air conditioner, they're both metal boxes. You know, so unless you understand the value of it, it's just the consumer. You're never going to get there. I mean, we will eventually, but we are such at the infancy of the education piece to the consumer. You just got to build it in, and they buy it. Clearly, they're buying it.
First of all, I want to go back and just say, I totally applaud the rural conservation community that's certified green. I strongly believe in that. I would get a lot of pushback from municipalities or stakeholders in the community, NIMBY's not in my backyard, that said, you can't be green unless you're living in the urban core. And my response to that was, wait a minute, you're never going to have solar farms. You're not going to be focusing on the connection between local food. And so that was the thing that I thought, that's probably a message that I still work on today, is the education that we all have to learn how to be more sustainable no matter where we are, no matter where we live, in our workplace, in our homes, in our communities. And so that's very important. And why did you move east of 75? That's simple. Large piece of land east of 75 allowed you to position your product to meet a more affordable and active price point. And people respond to that. Yeah. So anyway, that's just what I wanted to add. Yes.
I'm going to bring the microphone around. We got time for a few questions. He goes.
Great. Hey, I'm Tim Eccles from Georgia. I had a chance to visit Babcock Ranch with Florida Power and Light. Went out and looked at the big solar array, the batteries that they had there that they were having some heat issues with, and which they asked me not to tweet about, which I didn't. I did. I actually had to pull it down at their request. But when I went to Babcock Ranch, I love so much about your community, by the way. That little little city center with all the, you know, renewable energy displays. I love that. But when I went into a couple of the homes with a couple of different builders in a couple of different sections, and I asked, if I buy your home, can you put solar on it for me as a addition? Do you have a, you know, because I had the sheet here for the marble and the different tub and the different thing, but nothing about solar. And they said, well, we really don't do that. And I had to conclude that no one's asking about it, or else they would be doing it, but there's no trees like here at Seaside. So I just wonder if that's something you guys had thought about or asked them not to do, or why they're not offering
Absolutely
solar.
not. So first of all, I'm going to comment about the solar array. We are a living laboratory. That is something that we absolutely hold on to. We have autonomous vehicles. We know that they are in, you know, research still at this point. We have the battery backups. We want to try things, and we're okay to say we tried something sustainable and it didn't work, and we had to pivot, so to speak. So absolutely, from a standpoint of a living laboratory, that's what we do. What you're mentioning is the challenge with educating the salespeople. We absolutely want people to put solar on their houses, but I think the salespeople who are new doing that, because the salespeople don't necessarily understand the value. So it goes back to educating. And so we do twice a year, but twice a year is not enough to keep up with the churn necessarily, especially with, you know, some of the builders for sure. Some of them, like Meritage, they have spray foam insulation, and their salespeople get it and they know how to market it. But some of these other production builders just, you know, it's lost in translation, and it's unfortunate.
I can't tell you in the last 21 years how many times a builder told me that his customers won't buy energy efficiency or green. And I would come back and say, have you asked them? No. So that's the thing. It's got to be part of your brand. And you've got to keep educating them, because if they don't feel comfortable enough because they're not an expert, then they won't discuss it at all. They won't discuss it at all. So keeping your message, your sustainable goals, your mission, keeping it active in your community and your corporation helps people to understand what you're all about, and they do come around. The more educated they are, the more vocal they will be in their support.
Hi, now continue the conversation to Laura. My name is Tony. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. You mentioned just now in Lakewood Ranch, no gates. When we did master plan, say 30 years ago, everybody wants a gate. What made you say no gate, and what's making it attractive?
Well, we have both in Lakewood Ranch. We have gates and non-gates. And I do think once you start going in the direction of gates, there's almost like this, you create this perceived need for gates. And in Sarasota, I mean, it really was Sarasota that pushed us in that direction, where their 2050 plan required us to have integrated neighborhoods. So if you go from one neighborhood to the next, no gates in between them. And that was probably when I started about 5 years ago. We opened the first two neighborhoods in Sarasota and Waterside. And the builders, this is to your point, the builders just, you know, they just started from the point that they were never going to be able to sell any homes without gates. That how did we, you know, and forget the fact that you signed a contract knowing that you weren't going to be able to have gates, but they kept revisiting this notion of we need gates, we need gates. I just did an analysis there. The highest price points now in Lakewood Ranch are on 76-foot lots. I think our average price point is 1.6 million in a non-gated community. So I have the data now. This speaks to the fact that A, you can mix a $1.6 million house and walk to one that's 400,000. B, you can actually sell homes in non-gated communities, and in fact, the premiums. Oh, and by the way, this is the other thing you're going to get is there's one of the things we did in Waterside was that in all of around the big lakes, we made the trail network open to the public. So not only do you have Matt Gates, but you're invoking heresy by bringing people on bikes and on the trails in front of my house, and I'll never be able to sell that house. And again, I had to show Pulte their own numbers and said, when they said they refused to put a trail between the home and the lake, and I said this was the most you got on a house in Shoreview in Lake House Cove. So it's data, and it's a lot of the sales, it's the marketing and sales teams that really need to buy into it.
So are your roads public, county maintained?
They are.
All right, what about the lakes?
The lakes are, they're all under the stewardship district. So those are all managed by the stewardship district. Yeah, by the stewardship district. Mm-hmm. Right, and the trail network too. Trails, parks.
But you said the trail was open.
It is. That's right. The stewardship district is an overlay for all of Lakewood Ranch, and it maintains the trails, the common areas, the lakes.
So somebody that lives not in Lakewood Ranch come out and
Sure.
in the lake. That's allowed.
Yeah, and they're welcome to do that. Yeah.
So what changed in the sense of security that went from gated to no gate and public can come into your community?
I think it's just simply, it's performance. I mean, one of the things that I did, and we train the marketing and salespeople a lot. We spend a lot of time with them, but you just show analogs. So in our area, downtown Sarasota, if you look, there's a neighborhood called Westa Trail. It's the highest values in Sarasota. It's on the waterfront, but there's no gates there. There's no gates in downtown Sarasota in any of the neighborhoods down there. And of course they get the highest land values. So sometimes you have to give the salespeople that ammunition and explain to them, well, this is a different community. If you want gated, there's plenty of gated opportunities in Lakewood Ranch, but this is what we're doing here is we think we're attracting a different buyer profile that wants to have walkable communities and accessibility to the town center, and they want to get on a trail in front of their house. I do think it's a little bit of a different profile, but at the end, it's just, you just have to, the market demonstrates it by its performance.
So my other comment to that would be it's definitely in design. So you apply SIP-TED design concepts, you do eyes on the street, you have front porches, and I will tell you the multi-generational communities, you have a lot more activity because you have the kids coming home to grandparents and then they're outside riding their bikes. They're not in daycare until 6 o'clock at night. So a lot of it has to do with the culture of the community. We're also an independent special district, but we want people to come out to the town that don't live there. Hopefully they'll eventually buy there, but we want them to come out and ride bikes and get on our 50 miles of trails and do all that stuff. But it comes back to sense of community, and people provide the security. It's eyes instead of gates.
And most people are coming from other locations who've never lived in an HOA or master plan community. Most of our buyers now are from New York and New Jersey and have never lived in an HOA, so it's not so uncomfortable.
Actually, when I drove through Lakewood Ranch, what popped in my mind is that this is superior land planning, because they may not have gates, but they have designed the land and the lots in such a way with green space running behind them, and I would almost call it enclaves of higher priced homes adjacent to a much lower home, but they do it very well.
I'm gonna take the last question, if that's okay. So we talked about HERS, the home energy rating system, and for those that aren't familiar with that, I kind of describe it as the miles per gallon sticker when you're buying a new car. As a realtor, how soon before that becomes part of the MLS?
It is part of the MLS and many MLS networks. I know Alachua County did that, and the Treasure Coast also incorporated. So green MLS categories, they're there. Not very many people use them, but again, that's an education thing. Yep. So when you have a community in the neighborhood, teaching the realtors is really critical. realtor training and lender training, because not to mention that there is still the energy efficient mortgage on the books for Fannie, Freddie, VA, conventional loan in one interpretation or another. You actually can use your energy savings that must be quantified by HERS and attached to the contract as addendum B to separate out the value. That was the other thing. Appraisers don't see the value. If you add all your standards on there, but add a value to it, that's how you overcome the appraisal problem. So it's using, to me, I think the ultimate success is when you can tie lending with sustainable incentives into it. And they now, Fannie Mae told me 2 years ago that their biggest loan product in the entire country is green multifamily. And guess who reaps the benefits from those incentives? The developer. You don't hear about it on the street much, but she says it's the largest, highest production loan product they have.
Great, great. And I know for me, when I saw the shifting tide, I got a frantic call from a hotel developer who was getting ready to close on his development. And he called me and said, you know, please tell me you're a LEED accredited professional, because I can't get my financing unless I can prove that I have a LEED AP on the project. And I was just like, wow, okay, the market has changed. Well, great. So this has been a fantastic panel. I wish we had more time. Very, very informative. Thank you so much for putting it together. Please give our panel a round of applause.